Hey everyone, welcome to the Dance Diaries. I'm Carole.
And I'm Kim. Welcome everyone.
We are so honored today to have Steven Dougherty with us from Metropolitan Dance Center to talk a little bit about how to stand out in dance competitions. And before we get started, I want to share with our audience the amazing accomplishments that Steven's had over the years. So Steve has been a professional dance competitor for many, many years and has won over 40 regional titles. But most especially, his highest accomplishments include being an amateur national 10-den champion, amateur national international style standard champion. He's represented the United States in 2 world championships, including being in Singapore and in Germany. He's also held U.S. National Professional Rising Star American Smooth Champion and is a 5-time U.S. National and World Professional American Smooth Finalist.
Wow.
And finally, and even higher in the accolades, is in 2007, he was the World American Smooth Show Dance Champion. Thank you so much, Steve, for being on our podcast.
Thank you for being with us and taking your time on a Sunday, guys.
We are so honored to go through the things that you do as being a judge, right, on the circuit.
Sure.
And even beyond that, an invigilator in the circuit as well.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I need to know the difference between a judge and an invigilator because I have no idea.
Well, the judge is the people like, and the invigilator is the one they hate.
You know what?
Okay.
Pink slips. I mean, that's what they
So the basic difference, judge and invigilator, obviously a judge is the one who stands around the sides of the floor and places couples, 1 to 3, does the callbacks, assesses your dancing in comparison to the other dancers on the floor. Mm-hmm. The invigilator has one specific job, and that specific job is to look at who's dancing on the floor, what level are you dancing in, and making sure that the steps you are dancing and the routines you are dancing are within the category that you're dancing. So if you're dancing bronze, you have to be dancing the bronze steps. If you're dancing silver and gold, likewise the same thing. And so there's a whole criteria, and there's a book, and all the steps are listed. And so the invigilator does a whole overview of the floor and looks at them and makes sure that they're all in category. And then when they're not in category, and this is the part that everybody hates, then we have to go up to that professional and we have to let them know that they did something out of category and how they can potentially fix it. And that's the part.
Does that often happen? Does that happen a lot?
It happens more than it should.
Oh, wow.
But, the invigilators, everybody, they get a bad rap because, of course, they're like the dance police, as they are termed. But the thing is, we're not out there. We don't wake up in the morning saying, who am I going to get today? Who am I going to nail? How many yellow slips can I give out?
Are they yellow slips? I used to see a pink slip.
No, they're yellow. They're yellow slips. It's like a traffic ticket that you give out.
No joke.
We don't get paid extra for them. But
not if they're late by 90 days. You don't have to collect extra money.
No. But at the end of the day, we're there to just try and keep the dancing on an even playing field.
Okay.
So that a bronze student doesn't have this other person they're dancing against with all the fancy choreography that shouldn't be in there. Yeah. And then they feel that it's an unfair evaluation. So we're just trying to do that for the competitors, keep it on a level playing field. And it's evolving. The steps, the international style has been pretty consistent from the beginning of time. The American style is the one that evolves, especially the smooth and the rhythm, because there are so many syllabi that they come from. Fred Astaire, Arthur Murray, Dance Vision. Yes. There's lots of them. And so therefore they took the most similar steps out of all of them and placed them in the syllabus that you can dance at an NDCA competition. So we're there just to make sure that we keep everybody on the level playing field. And
which one do you like better?
As far as?
Being an adjudicator or an invigilator?
Well, in the response of people, I think a judge is better. But I don't mind invigilating because it's for the right cause.
I know that you have probably gotten this question a million times, but I'm going to ask it again anyway because I want to. What do you look for? What is it? What is the deciding factor? What do you look for, especially for the lady dancers on the amateur side, that sets her apart from another dancer?
Depending on the level that the student is dancing. So for me as a judge, when you're dancing a bronze category, silver category, or a gold category, or an open category, there is different criteria for me as a judge that I'm looking for. At a bronze level, I don't necessarily expect the bronze dancer to be the most animated, styled, and some of them are fantastic, but I like to see good, clean technique, nice frame, good posture, the things that you should be learning when you first start to dance, how to hold a dance frame, how to move your feet, how can move across the floor. Not necessarily the fanciest arm styling that happens, right?
Right.
And as you progress in the levels, then in silver, well, I want to see a little bit more style. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've got your technique, down, and you're still working on it, but now I want to see a little more dance, a little more style, more arms, more personality on the floor. By the time you get to gold and then open gold, I want to see the whole package.
Yeah.
So it's performance time. Entertain me.
Yeah, I told you, Kim.
Yeah,
Entertain me.
yeah.
I was like,
So nobody wants, not nobody, I particularly don't want to watch somebody who's not having a good time on the floor, because if you're not having a good time, then why do I want to watch you?
Right.
Not that I won't watch you, but it just would be nicer to know that you're enjoying it so that I could enjoy it as well.
do the judges generally, is that like an average feeling they get about they just want to see someone enjoying the dance? Yeah.
I mean, I know some judges who will say that I don't look for anything. You have to show me something.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, wow.
And I guess, when I'm looking on the floor, I'm not looking, I don't, when a couple starts dancing, I don't look for, the lady who's going to give me the best heel turn right off the bat. It's just, I think I often say, depending on what round you're dancing in, if you're dancing in a quarterfinal or a first round or a semifinal, those are the rounds that the judges don't have a lot of opportunity with all the people on the floor to study every element of your dance.
Right.
So
I think about that a lot.
You need to have the personality and the confidence and just be out there convincing me that what you're doing is the best on the floor. Maybe it's not, but at that moment, I need to believe that.
Yeah.
Right? And I will look at it and I'll evaluate it. When you get into a final round and you get that far, well, then I want to see everything. I want to take a look at your technique. I want to take a look at your, all the other elements that build into that performance as well, as best I can. At the end of the day, we have, 10, 15 seconds to look at each competitor on the floor. So that's why consistency for me is important, because you never know when I'm looking. And so,
That's right.
if you're consistent throughout your routine, then that means I will catch you always at a pretty decent moment.
Yeah.
But if your routine is up and down and, sometimes you have a good moment, sometimes you don't, and I happen to catch you on your not so good moment.
That does happen. That happened to me a couple of times when I know that I messed up and I went, oh man, and I ended up, performing or scoring high. I said, they just didn't see at that second.
We don't watch you from beginning, unless you're the only competitor on the floor.
Yeah.
We don't really have time to watch you from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And the thing about mistakes on the floor, for me, if I see you make a mistake, typically I will look away and come back.
Yes.
Give you
Okay,
time to
good.
recover,
Yeah.
get yourself back on track. Now, if I come back and you still haven't recovered, then I'm like, okay, well, then we're having a bad dance at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not coming back to where it
Does
should
that hurt the dancer? Let's say they're doing multiple rounds and not that you know these people individually, but I'm just saying you might recognize them and they're having a bad day. But if they go into other heats or other later on and they're dancing in the day, do you do it simply by that round when they come out or that heat?
I do, yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, I have not marked people into a final, and then they get into a final, and suddenly I'm marking them maybe third or fourth.
Okay.
Yeah, wow.
And it's because, and I'll look at it and I'll say, well, where was that? I didn't see that in the earlier round. Lucky for you, you're here, and now I like what I see. Or sometimes I'll mark somebody into a final because they were great in those early rounds, and they get into the final, I'm like, okay, what happened? And it could be, there's so many factors that go into it, but
Well, for me, it takes me all day to warm up before the final or the championship or scholarship. I'm like, now I'm just warmed up. I danced 50 heats.
But you said that you dance 50 heats. I'm going in like 2 weeks and I'm doing 6 heats. So I have to go warm up for an hour in order to feel like I've done 20 heats, or at least that's what I have to do, Steve, like in order to make sure that I'm feeling like my best.
Yep.
Even though I want to do my best with 6 heats, it's okay. But I remember in the day when I used to do maybe 35, and it was all, I felt the best at the end of that.
Always.
But,
It takes that time.
sure.
Yeah. So how important then is it to go all out when you're in a studio to be just like you are on the dance floor? Do you believe that you should be doing it like that every single time?
I absolutely believe that, and I will tell people on coachings, or if they ask me, sometimes I'll see, for competitive students, obviously. I mean, too often I see when students are working on something and then they'll go up and take their dance teacher into position and they take it like, they're just walking down the street. There's no frame, there's no posture, there's none of that stuff, no performance element. And I'm like, but you're a competitor. So anytime you're going to take a dance frame, anytime you're going to work on a step, you should be approaching it like you're walking onto a competition floor. Otherwise, how does your body train to always feel that?
That is really good
So
advice.
you can't just say, all right, let's do that again. again. And then suddenly on the step that you're working on, the body comes up. The body always has to be present. The muscles have to be
I've heard
Great
that on a
advice.
couple of coachings, Kim, but ever since someone brought that up, and of course, Steve, being in your studio, thank you very much. I've learned also to do that more and more, and I'm less worried about what my fellow, I won't say competitors or dancers that are in the studio. I don't care. I really don't see them when I'm practicing, but I am trying to include that more and more in my practice. And I remember, Paulina was one of my coaches once, and she just taught me to be grander and bigger and all that. And so I try to incorporate that into
practice,
the studio, even though I'm going to do like maybe less heats. I'm going to try to come out my floor.
And I think it's important to run rounds in the studio.
Rounds are important.
Oh,
Just play the competition music, as if you're in competition. And just
I think
run
rounds are important. I think you also have to be careful not to over round yourself.
Okay.
Because running rounds means you're running through your dances, and that's important so that you work on your stamina, you can get through the routines.
I have a question that I want to know the answer to.
I don't do rounds anymore.
No.
Okay.
So I always wanted to know this. Carole knows. You have two dancers,
Yes.
same category,
Yes.
same level,
Yes.
dancing pretty much, through their rounds or whatever, relatively almost neck and neck. What is the deciding factor?
The dress. No, it's not.
Dress. I was just going to say, oh my gosh, what
No.
they've been telling me is true.
No. Well, whole package is, of course, important. But if I have all things being the same,
Yes.
okay, which at the end of the day, if you look at it long enough, not all things are going to be the same.
Right.
But they can be very close
Very
to being
similar.
the
Yeah.
same.
Where it's like, I don't.
Yeah, for me, it's a split second that something from one of them changed. Something sparked me differently. And sometimes that happens, it could be a first and second. They're both really good. They're both impeccably dressed. Grooming is perfect.
Yeah.
Everything is good. They're musical. They're rhythmical. What am I going to do?
Yes.
And I watch it, and I'll keep watching it until something in that couple is going to be the thing that changes it. And
So
sometimes
you don't know what it is. Right.
Sometimes it's just something that catches me, and maybe they hit a line sharper or faster.
Gotcha.
And that's the deciding factor, because when all things are equal, I have to find something to get
Extraordinary or out of the ordinary.
I've been thinking a lot about this. You mentioned once you watched a couple dancing and you're like, there's no connection there between those two people. And yet I might have looked at them and said, my God, look at that choreography and it looks all terrific. And you looked at it and said, those two people are dancing alone.
Yeah.
No connection.
Yeah.
So how do you see that in your judging? Like, how do you even tell when that happens?
Oh, it's easy to tell.
Well, tell us more, because
There's various ways to have connection on a dance floor, right? So the most obvious one is the visual, right? So if I'm looking at you, then I'm connected to you in that way. So at least I'm aware that I'm dancing with a person. Okay, so there's an eye connection. That's important. There's a physical connection, and that's about, the lead and follow and the feeling between the two couples, is one pulling the other? Are they working together as a couple, or is, one just dragging the other one around the floor, or not giving the other one an opportunity to dance by knocking them off their feet or pulling them off their feet? So that's another type of connection. The other connection too is musically. Are they, two people can hear music totally different. When I danced with my partner, Yulia, she heard things in the music that I didn't hear, but you have to learn as a partnership to let that happen. So if your partner feels something in the music, then as her partner, I had to let her do that. And sometimes on the floor, I see people who don't hear the music the same, which is okay, but you have to know how your partner's hearing it and what they're feeling in that moment to allow them to express that. Otherwise, it's just disconnected. I think the biggest thing is when people don't look at each other, and I think that's the most obvious to people. Great choreography, nice speed, they're executing it wonderful, but not once did they look at each other. How could you not look at this beautiful woman next to you in a yoga? That's a romantic dance, right? When you're looking at the ceiling, or you're looking down at the floor, or you're looking at the audience. Not that you shouldn't look at the audience at times, but if you're never looking at your partner, then where's that?
Right.
But that's a good example. Like in that style of dance, that should be expected, right? Where there is that kind of, I use the word character. You and I talk about that a lot. So what kind of like character play are you doing with your pro-am sort of partnership? It might be different supposedly for pro-am than it would be for a pro-pro, but nonetheless, you still need to feel like there's some sort of mutual connection there between them.
If I'm judging Pro-Am in a multi-dance scholarship event, then I'm not just judging the student, I'm judging how the student and the teacher are connected.
Right.
That's part of what a scholarship is about. It's about the partnership. It's not about ability. Obviously, you have a professional you're dancing with, so I'm not looking for you to match the ability, but I'm looking to see that you're connected. Like, are you in tune to what he's doing? Is he in tune to what you're doing?
Yep.
And it's not just a teacher dancing with a student and, can't wait for this to be over.
So I guess with that in mind, like one of the topics is how we stand out, right? As a pro-am amateur, sort of couples. Now, where does that start from? Because it's one thing to say, all right, if you're differentiating between two couples that are equally the same, or the amateur ladies and all of that, where does that start from for you as a judge about what you look at from the beginning right to the very end, and does that matter?
To me, everything matters. So I actually notice people when they walk onto the floor. And when you have a lot of competitors walking onto the floor, or if I'm judging a semifinal round or a quarterfinal, and there's a lot of people walking, you're bombarded with this big group of people that I have to make a decision in a very little amount of time. So I watch and I look for who walks on the floor like they own the floor, who has the confidence, who has the personality. And sometimes, and that's where my eye might go. Am I going to mark them? No, but that might be where I start looking first, because that person drew my attention. A lot of times it works out. Sometimes it's like their best part of their dancing was the walk on the floor.
Oh my God.
And they got that down. Good for them. But the dancing doesn't support that.
Walk on the floor.
So, sometimes.
I think that was me at a certain point.
But, and then there's the people who walk on the floor that look so not confident, or like, they just lost their best friend, or they're in this thought process, and then they take dancing and it's like spectacular. I'm like, well, you need to show me that earlier so that I don't have to find you later.
Right. Yeah, but if you didn't find it, let's say they walked out and you're like, whatever, you're boring. I mean, let's take a look at other people. Might that cross your mind? Like, okay, let's start looking elsewhere. I know you do an even review, but
whoever catches my attention is where my eyes are going to go first. Sometimes too, as a judge, for me, and I can only speak for me, is that couples who have this long intro into their choreography, sometimes this is probably more open choreography. I look elsewhere, because you walked on the floor, you look great, or maybe I know you and I'm expecting something, and then you've got this intro and there's a pose and there's a this and there's a that, and a lot of walking around each other, and there's no dancing yet. But I don't have a lot of time, so I can't watch your whole entrance. So I have to go somewhere else to see what somebody else is doing and come back.
How has the pro-am dancing evolved, Steve, for pro-ams that are standing out now? Like, how has that changed over the last decade?
I think the pro-am field is fierce. I mean, in all age categories, and particularly in the C and the senior one categories, I mean, they're serious dancers. It's more athletic.
No joke.
Yes.
Nobody's kidding around. As you can see the time and the effort that's put into it. And they're really high level quality dancers. I think it's great for the industry. I think it's fun to watch. But I've seen, the progression go.
I'm loving, and then in the age of social media now, you see so many more dancers across the country. You see postings of what people are doing. And then what's frightening for me is I see these people that dance almost every other week, and it like, I don't even know how they do it. But it's quite an industry, I'll tell you. But they are fierce competitors, Kim.
So you got your start young.
I did.
How did that happen?
When I was 13. So my mother and father were ballroom dancers.
Well, so that is how it happened.
Were they really, Steve? I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's how it happened.
But my father was also a coach for many different sports events. And so therefore, I was on the basketball team. I was on the baseball team. I was on the bowling league. I was on every sports thing, and I hated them all. And so my mother and father were like, well, you're not sitting home, so you better find something that you want to do, because you're not going to sit on the couch all day when you come home from school.
Right.
So I said to them, how about if I do what you do? And they were like, what? And I said, dance. And they said, you want to dance? I said, yeah. 2 weeks later, I was enrolled in a dance class. And so
Wow.
I did that. Luckily, I had parents who danced. So it was my father, who was this big sports guy, looked at me and said, you want to dance?
Right.
And he was like, great. It's an activity. It's physical. Good. Let's get you into it. And then I started competing pretty quickly.
So it was you that knew that that's what you wanted.
Well, I had to come up with an
wanted
answer.
to do.
So what I really wanted to do was sit on the couch and watch TV with my chips.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an answer.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That wasn't an answer, so I figured dance. But
Funny.
I did like it. I mean, I used to, my mother and father danced, her sisters danced, and there was always a dance that my aunt, my mother's sister, would always go to. And my uncle was a truck driver, so he was always late, and they always did the dance class before this dance social. So she would always take me. You learn the steps, and when your uncle gets here, you teach him.
You teach him. Oh.
And so I used to go with all these, I was like 11 or 12, and I would go with all these older people, and I would learn all the dance steps, and then I would show my uncle, and then he'd be able to dance with her. But then I was at the dances, so then, everybody wanted to dance with the young kid. And so,
Right.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
and so that's what I used to do. So
Wow, I
used to
love
dance.
that. And then you went into corporate.
I did.
Did you continue to dance during
I
that
did.
time?
So when I worked for IBM for 9 years, I was a computer programmer
you
as
believe
well as a systems engineer. And
You don't come off as an IBM guy to me at all.
yeah,
Sorry.
I was.
9
Corporate
years.
guy.
Really?
9 years, yeah.
Wow.
And I supported the big computer plants up in Poughkeepsie and Fishkill, and so I lived up in Fishkill. The dance studio I was at was in Brooklyn. So 3 nights a week, I would finish up in Fishkill. I'd get in the car. I'd drive to Brooklyn. I'd have lessons and practice with my partner, and I'd get back in the car and I'd drive home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wouldn't make it. I'd have to stop in Yonkers where my parents lived and stay overnight there, and then finish the drive in the morning. But that's what I would do 3 times a week. So I'd take that 2-hour ride into Brooklyn and a 2-hour ride back, and yeah. So I was enamored all that time.
And then
And then IBM offered a buyout. So IBM was a full employment company. They never fired anybody. Once you worked for IBM, you worked there for life. And I was on a leave of absence for 6 months because I had 2 world championships that I was going to do. And so I thought, well, let me take the time off and I'll just practice for that. And I did some part-time work while I was on the leave, but I was kind of getting antsy about being at IBM. So my manager called me when I was on leave and she says, so IBM's offering a buyout. This might be perfect for you. And I knew she needed to thin out the department.
Right, right.
And so I said, I think I'll take it. So I did. So I
Wow.
left IBM with a buyout. I started my own PC consulting business and then I also so I'd finished the world championships as an amateur. I turned professional, and then I started working for a studio in the city, 2 studios that I was working out part-time, but I also started a computer consulting business, my own PC consulting business.
And then, so congratulations, 20 years for
20 years
Metropolitan
on
Dance
this
Center.
studio. Yes, Metropolitan Dance
Congratulations. That's a
you.
big undertaking.
It is.
And so was it at that time that when you became professional, you were dancing part-time, teaching part-time in the city? How long did you do that before you...
So I started teaching in the city in 92, so I didn't open the dance studio until 2004. So I was an independent teacher in New York City at a place called Dance New York, where a lot of pros taught at. And it was, so I was good friends with, Mary Ann Nicole was my coach, and her husband, John De Palma, was a friend of mine, and he called me one day and said, so you want to open a studio? And that was like the last thing on my mind.
It's like
I
the
was
Mecca.
actively competing. I
Right,
was,
right.
big following in the city. And I was like, I guess, sure. And we had a lease together to open a studio in New York City. And we were still negotiating it, and we were finalizing it. And then John came across a space, not this one that we're in today, but over in Ridgeway Shopping Center. And he said, why don't you come and look at this? And we looked at that. The price was right. It was a good location. And so we opened in Connecticut.
Nice.
On November 9th, we're having our big anniversary showcase. So I'm going all out. I'm actually hiring people to do everything for me. Usually
Nice.
I set up all the pipe and drape.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm hiring people to do it all.
Good.
I've invited many of the teachers from the past who so far have all said yes. They're going to come.
Wow.
So, would you give our audience the names of some of these fabulous instructors that you have had working at the studio? That'd be great.
Shannon Jensen, who started at our studio, will be coming back to the anniversary party. They're actually going to do some numbers for us, so they're going to perform.
They do cabaret
Nice.
and American Rhythm,
love
right?
that.
They do.
Kim loves cabaret.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be a great show. Happy to have them come back. John Campbell was a Rising Star finalist. He's coming back with his wife, Lena.
Nice.
This is Julia is coming in. My partner is coming in from Vegas.
Nice.
Amazing. Being in your studio now for 5 years, what is it, at least 5 by now? I loved coming here. When I did my research, I wanted to be in a studio that was a competitive dance studio, a place that did great choreography, that loved, doing these, at least a couple times a year, like doing in-house sort of showcases and stuff. And I love that you enjoy choreography. Is that one of the funnest things you like to do as a studio owner?
I like to do choreography, yes. And choreography isn't for everybody, but it is one thing that I like to do. I think I'm kind of good at it. So I usually choreograph our showcases. But now I've got a really good, not that I haven't before, but I have a staff that actually likes to choreograph, where I had some staff before that wasn't necessarily their thing. And so now we make it a more collaborative effort.
I was just going to say collaborative choreography is the best anyway. Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I have the final say. But I listen to all the ideas, and they come up with great ideas, and it's fun. I mean, when you do 2 showcases a year for 20 years, eventually, how many leg lifts and how many runarounds and how many dips can we think of new and different.
Yeah.
So, but I'll never forget, I've come to you with some music, and you're like, nope, we can't do that because it was used 4 years ago by so-and-so. Like, you're pretty good about it to try to keep it fresh.
Show dances and showcases are interesting animals because what might be your most favorite song to dance to is great, but remember, you're not just dancing for yourself, you're dancing for a whole audience. And so if the audience doesn't relate to what you're doing, then the reaction may not be what you're hoping for.
Correct.
It could feel empty, or it could be quiet, or they just don't get it. So I think it's important to always choose music that you like, that you want to dance to, but that will have some appeal to an audience who's watching it. It doesn't mean they have to be familiar with it, it just has to be a good beat. Or the choreography really has to match the music so that you make them enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The one thing I do not like, and even if we go back to judging, when you're judging cabaret or theater arts events, the thing that I troubles me most sometimes is when a couple puts a beautiful piece of music together but doesn't put any choreography that matches it.
It doesn't match like the wording or the.
So people say, well, I don't want to act out every word. You don't have to act out the word, but if you have a beautiful romantic song and you're just doing some blank piece of choreography that has no romance in it, then how do I relate the two? Or if you're doing something that is totally bizarre with the music that you've chosen and I don't understand it, then I'm not...
Like, what's the mening?
Right.
Because you want to tell the story through the dance.
Yeah, you want to, right. It doesn't mean I need an outline and I need every word.
Right.
I used to have a student who liked to, when we did showcases, she wanted every word acted out. But the audience isn't going to hear all the words, right?
Yeah.
So you're relying on the audience to have the lyrics in front of them. So that's not what I'm talking about. There has to be, if we'll go back to connection, there has to be a connection between the couple and the music.
Yeah.
And if you're going to perform it, then there should be something. And sometimes I will watch, and I guess because I choreograph sometimes, and I hear highlights in music or things that come up, and I see nothing happen. Not that you have to hit every highlight, but if there's nothing happening to those really special parts of the music, then I think, well, then you just put choreography together, this music, and you didn't really put any thought behind it.
Nothing behind it. Right,
well, I know there's lots of judging for show dance competitions and pro-am competitions that are out there. It's becoming bigger and bigger. I love it. And even to the point where there's some best of the best and all that. What are the different categories that are on that judging sheet compared to what you would judge in regular heats, let's say?
So it has changed. So when we're doing pro-am solo dances or show dances, they actually give you a sheet now with several categories where you get to score them, needs work, they're good, or they're excellent.
Right.
And there are things like, musicality, costuming, was the theme portrayed correctly, or did you get the theme?
Musicality, arm styling.
Well, styling is it actually goes under the performance category.
Oh, okay.
How it was performed.
This is for show dances.
I know. Yeah.
So at least it kind of gives you an assessment of, there's about, 8 or 9 of them, different categories. For me, the only thing that I think could be a little bit worked is that they only give you needs work, good, or excellent. Well, sometimes to me, something could be very good. It's better than good, but I don't consider it excellent. But
can you write it in the notes?
Sometimes I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What catapults someone from very good into excellent? What would do that for you?
Well, for instance, I just judged a show dance where, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the song, but it was a very character song, and they dressed like the characters of the song. So for me, costuming and theme, excellent, because I hear the song, I get the characters, you're dressed like them, the theme is portrayed well, so boom.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind. So to me, that. Now, when we're looking at technique and footwork, well, you need a lot to get an excellent from me. But again, that goes back to level. What level are you dancing? I expect more from an advanced student than a non-advanced student. So
I like costumes a lot. And sometimes I'll choose songs and I love to do it. And then I'm like, oh my God, like how am I going to portray this thing character wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to plan more now, and let's say I'm coming to you or my teacher, and I'm trying to come up with something, knowing what that sheet looks like, and I'm thinking, okay, will my song selection lead to an outcome that might be like to where I'm going to stand out in front of the crowd or in front of the other competitors? So yeah. I was curious
and
about
not
that.
everything has to be costumed like Halloween costume type of thing. To me, you can be in the simplest outfits, but if you're so connected to your music and each other, then that to me discloses the theme. And
What is the future for Steven Dougherty?
another cruise.
Well,
Is it a dance cruise?
We just put in our
No dance cruise. No, cruises are my vacation. There's no dancing.
When
on a
is that?
cruise.
Where are you going?
Well, I'm going to Greece in August. So
Nice.
that'll be fun.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
The studio is my baby.
Yeah.
It's my passion. I think the thing why 20 years and why I'm still here and why I still do it is because the thing for me that is the most gratifying is to see how students can come in here not knowing a whole lot, and then they progress.
Right.
And then there's some, I'm fortunate enough to have students that have been here more than 10 years. They came as beginners, and now they're advanced students. And to see where they were and how they've, on their journey and what this has done for them in their dance life, is very rewarding for me. For whatever part I might have had in that, not that I necessarily was their teacher, but for whatever, I know that they did it at my studio.
Yep.
So therefore, that's rewarding. And that's why I'm still here doing it.
Do you also coach?
I do.
Oh.
I coach, yeah. Mostly within the studio. I'm not a big travel coach.
Right.
Never wanted to be a big travel coach. Not that I would refuse it when somebody asks me, but it's not something I go out and pursue because there's so much to do here.
In your own studio.
And it's, for me, it's very rewarding to see the people that you're with all the time progress and move through.
Very nice.
So
Well, you have a very successful studio. I've come to
I'm lucky.
almost all of your events in the past. I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
No,
you've been to pretty
and I
much all of them.
Yeah, all
it's
of them,
been
and
great.
I love them.
Thank you for coming.
And we thank you today for taking part of your
It's been a
Sunday
pleasure.
and being open with all of our questions and
Yes.
telling us the honest truth about a lot of stuff. A lot of great tips.
I
A lot
know.
of great
Very
information
much.
here.
I'm so exposed now.
No, we so appreciate.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I think our listening audience is going to find this very compelling. They're going to take some time to think about that. And again, Steve from Metropolitan Dance Center, thank you so much for being on our
you.
podcast.
Thank you.
Have a great day.